and welcome back to the Zag Talk podcast. My name is Brian. I'm joined by my co-host Carson. Today we're going to talk a little bit about the Creighton game, but this is mostly going to be a preview of our Elite Eight matchup with USC. To start off, we're going to talk quickly about the Creighton game. It was just a fantastic game. Early on, the pace that we played at was I think not quite where we wanted to be. I think in the first half, up until toward the end, I don't know if we had much opportunity in transition to kind of get out and run. But at the end of the day, the team handled business. Overall, as a team, we shot close to 60% from the field. Timmy went off 22 points, 6 rebounds, 4 assists, and everyone contributed in big ways. The only starter that wasn't in double figures was Jalen Suggs, but he had 6 assists and 5 rebounds himself. So look, overall, it was just a really, really good team win. And with that, on to USC. Carson, you want to give some details around this USC team, and we'll jump into the matchup?
Yeah, so we touched on it a little bit on our last episode, but just diving a little deeper here into USC. First of all, it's going to be kind of the talk of it is going to be it's the number 1 2-point defense versus the number 1 2-point offense of all time, as Ken Pom just tweeted out after the game when we knew it was going to be Gonzaga versus USC. So that's kind of going to be the big matchup. Is Gonzaga's bread and butter is points in the paint, and we shoot a super high percentage, and we take a ton of our shots in the paint. And USC is really, really good at defending shots in the paint, and probably because they have a future, probably number 2, number 3 pick in Evan Mobley, 7-footer, huge wingspan. He's more of your modern day big in terms of just he's not a big bodied dude. He's just long and lengthy and super athletic. So what we've said before too is their whole entire team is really lengthy in general. So that probably plays into it. Ken Pom numbers, they're 6th in Ken Pom. They might actually have hopped up after today's game, but they're the 15th ranked offense and 5th ranked defense overall. They're a little bit slower on the tempo side at 236th. We saw a lot of their 2-3 zone today against Oregon, pretty much exclusively their 2-3 zone. And that'll be something that's going to be really interesting to keep an eye on because, as we've talked about previously, Gonzaga has just completely cut up zones this year. We're scoring 1.25 points per possession against zone. And normally when teams have tried it, they've had to get out of it really quick. And it's really not because we're shooting them out of the zone or anything. It's one, we're beating them down the court, or we're out rebounding them out of the zone. And we just pick it apart. We get Ayayi at the high post or Timmy or anybody like that. And we're able to kind of pick it apart. So something to keep an eye on. They've played zone in 9.6% of their defensive possessions this year. So in general, they're not in it a ton, although that is above the average. And you'll notice if you watch the Oregon game, it is a pretty extended zone. They're using their length to disrupt passes. And they really bring up the back guys on the zone to cover the 3 and make sure you're not getting any open looks. They really contest them. The middle is fairly open to get into and to get passes into. They don't collapse super hard. It's just really getting around the length there. And they don't, I think it might be different this time around with Timmy inside, whereas Oregon doesn't really have a big inside. But they didn't crash down a lot with Oregon. So something to look out for, because if Timmy's getting it down low and there's no help, sure, I mean, Evan Mobley's a great defender and he might not be getting the best looks, but he's going to get some looks, and those could be some quick hitters there. Other than that, there was some good offensive rebounding opportunities. I know Oregon crashes the glass hard too, but just anytime in a zone, especially one that's extended like that, and the way that we rebound offensively across all 5 positions, there could be a lot of opportunities, even though that USC is a pretty good defensive rebounding team, but they don't play zone all the time. So if they're in that, that's going to be really interesting to see. Brian, did you have any thoughts on their zone and defense in general watching them today?
Yeah, I think that it reminded me a lot of when Iowa played zone against us. I think it's a little bit different just because Evan Mobley is definitely more nimble. And I think that part of the reason why they run that zone, or they ran that zone today in particular against Oregon, is because they saw how easily Oregon was able to get to the basket against Iowa. And they said, we need to figure out a way to make sure that Evan Mobley stays around the hoop to be able to rim protect. And I think it was effective in doing that. I didn't see a lot of opportunities for Oregon to attack the basket and drive. But I think what this Gonzaga team is particularly good at doing is attacking the gaps at the moment those gaps open up, and then dumping it down to their bigs, or dropping it off to their bigs for a quick bucket. And it's not like when those opportunities come up, or when those dump downs happen, that our bigs aren't ready for it, or they don't go up with it quickly. Because I think that's where teams can get stuck. And that's kind of where Oregon got stuck today against that zone. They were a little bit slow and methodical when they would catch the ball in the high post. I think there was one point where it was Chris Duarte going one-on-one with Evan Mobley, and he settled for like a step back long two and missed really badly. When we attacked Iowa's zone, we would get it to the middle of the floor with Joel Ayai, and it was either a kick out to Kispert for a three, or a dump down to Timmy for an immediate layup. There wasn't any kind of messing around or spreading the floor and trying to go one-on-one with guys. So I think that if USC chooses to play that zone, it'll be a very poor decision, and they will choose to play man almost immediately. Their coach he's solid in their game planning. I think as we've talked about, it'll be a little bit of a chess match, which is kind of cool, but I think that they will find that the zone is not going to be super successful for them, even if we can't knock down our outside shots, because we're so good at moving the ball when it's in the interior. So those are my thoughts on it.
Yeah, I kind of agree there in terms of the chess match. I know Stephen Card tweeted it out, and we were just talking about everybody talks about, it seems this year when we go to play a different team, it's like, oh, well, this is an interesting matchup against Gonzaga. USC has got the big guys and they have the length, and Evan Mobley versus Timmy, but we often ignore, how is this team going to stop Gonzaga, or what are their bad matchups with Gonzaga? Because pretty much every team we've played, we've been a bad matchup for. I mean, that's what happens. 28 of the 29 games are double-digit wins. And I think the thing that Stephen Card pointed out was that if we go with our normal starting lineup, which you might think that we wouldn't as much because of their size and height, but if we go with that, they're going to have a really tough time playing a man-to-man defense, and we'll pretty much have to go into that zone because they're 6'11" or 6'10". I think it'd be Isaiah Mobley who would have to guard probably Kispert, or one of our other guards, and that's just going to be a mismatch all over the place, and we can screen that over and over and over again and get the switch that we want, or whatever matchup we want there, and just attack it. And that probably means foul trouble, even though they tend not to get in foul trouble. That's why they're such a good defensive team. But and then on the other end of the ball, it's going to be, do we need to bring Watson in to help defend there? But I almost think in this situation, we're better off in that, because the priority number one for either team is slowing down Gonzaga's offense, because you can score. USC is not as a proficient scoring team as Gonzaga. So if you really want to get into that track meet where it's just like, okay, well, you guys can score, but we're going to score too, it's probably not going to end super well for you, as we've seen. So I do think we might see that zone, even though we've done a great job against zones, like you said. I was even just going through kind of putting down like kind of the top principles to beating a zone, and tell me what team this sounds like when going through them. So you have to swing the ball with skips and hop passes, really good passing team, move the ball, unselfish. You need to attack the gaps, either, a couple dribbles and kick it out, or attacking them full speed when they open up. You need to screen the zone. That's a little more specific, but something that Oregon didn't do very well. Perimeter and interior spacing. You have to have great spacing against a zone, and baseline cuts and high to low passing. I think if there's any of those that maybe we're not great at, it would be high to low passing, but baseline cuts, Joel Ayai, attacking the gaps. Jalen Suggs, if he sees any daylight, is attacking that in an instant. Corey Kispert's great at stepping into gaps. And so is Ayai and Nemhard with their probing dribbles. perimeter interior spacing, we have probably the best spacing in the entire country in terms of in college basketball. And I think I already touched baseline cuts.
Yeah, no doubt, no doubt. But you do make a good point about being able to control the pace. And I was just looking at USC's games that they've played this year, and their kind of total possession numbers, which is kind of indicative of pace. Um, in only 10 of their games this year have they had greater than 70 possessions, and in all but in all but 4 of our games have we had 70 or greater possessions, most of which came against Iowa when we had 85 possessions. So, with that said, I don't know if USC has faced a team like us this year. They haven't faced a team that can push the tempo like we can. And it'll really pose interesting challenges for them. So you make a good point. I mean, they might stay in the zone purely because it slows us down and doesn't allow us to get back or doesn't allow us to get out in transition. So that's a really good point. Now on the defensive end, I mean, what are your thoughts around how we contain Evan Mobley or contain their shooters? What are your thoughts there?
Yeah, it's kind of an interesting thing because they've played so differently in these last few tournament games where they've shot the crap out of the ball, and that's not the normal thing for them. They only have one guy averaging over 38% from three on more than 50 attempts on the season. They have a couple guys who are shooting. I think Isaiah Mobley's like 46%, but he's only shot 35 threes all season. And then Ethan Anderson off the bench as well, as he's 38% on 44 attempts. So they're not a great shooting team overall, but they've been hot. I think today they got a lot of really, really good open looks because Oregon's defense was pretty much absent. But I think, and I texted you guys this during the game, I think our game plan is going to be really similar to what we played when we played Iowa. It's if this guy gets 25 plus points and we shut down the other guys, like that's a win for us. And we're probably walking out of there with a 15 plus point win. Because we've seen it this year in multiple games. Evan Mobley doesn't have to have 20 points for them to win. And actually they've played really well the last few games where he's had, low teens or, he hasn't taken over a game, and it's been the other guys who have just had huge games, open looks, because people are so focused on Mobley. So, I think we throw a bunch of different bodies at him. I think Timmy will be on there sometimes. I think we'll get Watson there too. If he's playing more high post and perimeter, like if it gets switched on to Kispert, I don't think we'll really care all that much. I think it's really just going to be keying on those other guys and making sure that they're not getting open looks from three, and that we're limiting their play, which I think we're going to be able to do. So I think that's kind of the big key. Shut down the other guys. If he gets his 30 points or whatever, and we're limiting those other guys, I think we're going to be in a really great position.
Yeah. No, you make a great point. And they have been in the last few games just been going off from out of nowhere. There's one guy in particular that we kind of texted back and forth about, Isaiah White. In the last 2 games against Kansas and Oregon, he is 7 of 9 from 3, which is nuts. And as a team, they're shooting about 60%, 61.1% against Kansas and 58.8% against Oregon. Now, with that said, we haven't allowed a team this year to shoot greater than 50% against us. In fact, there are only 6 games this year where we've allowed teams to shoot greater than 40% from 3 against us. So, I mean, is that a concern to you that their shooters might go off, and how will we handle that? I mean, what do you think?
It's hard for me. I feel like there's eventually going to be a reversion to the mean, but you never know. And they're on fire right now. So I think the thing that worries me the most about that is just they're feeling it right now, and they have that momentum. And those can be, when you get some of those guys who aren't normally scoring like that, are hitting those big shots and going on these runs by hitting these threes, like that can be a huge momentum shifter. And especially in a game like in the Elite Eight on the big stage, that can be huge in terms of just getting them going, getting them comfortable, and feeling like, hey, we can play in this game. If you're just shutting them down and no one else is really getting going, like that completely can kind of throw a wrench in the offensive flow for a team. So that's kind of why I think, if it's Evan Mobley and that's kind of it, other guys aren't getting their shots or getting them to fall, you're going to kind of see it like Creighton today, where it really wears on them. And it's just like what are we doing here? It's kind of demoralizing to just your shots aren't falling. And if you're not that one guy scoring, it kind of takes everybody else out of the game.
Right. No, that's a good point. And I think that there are a few different ways that this USC team loses. And their overall record is 25-7, by the way. And one thing I found interesting was that they've had one loss this year where they seem to actually play pretty well according to like the efficiency numbers and stuff like that. But in that game, and this was their last Pac-12 game, it was against Colorado. It was a 72-70 loss to Colorado. Evan Mobley went off. He dropped 26. The issue there, though, was that they only had one other player that scored in double figures, and that was Taj Edey. And the big reason why is because he shot 2 of 2 from 3, but he was 4 of 9 from the field overall. So not outstanding there. As a team, even they shot 47% from 3, which is pretty dang good. And Evan Mobley was still able to go off, and they still lost. Now, the flip side of that is in all of their other losses, Evan Mobley is averaging 4 points less than his average at 12.5 per games in those losses. So if you can shut him down, it helps you out a lot. With that said, and I keep going back to this Iowa example just because, like, even though Luka Garza is, not even close to as athletic as Evan Mobley, I mean, it's two dominant bigs that kind of, handle a majority of the load for their teams. Luka Garza can drop 30 and his team can still lose by double digits. So I'm kind of with you. Like, I really don't know if it's the end of the world if Evan Mobley just straight, dominates us and drops 28 or 30 or 35 or whatever. I think that what's going to be key is just like how I think the pace of the game is going to be a big part of it. And like we've talked about, like if we can score 80 points, like that's kind of a wrap. I don't know if there would be a situation where we'd score 80 points and put out a defensive performance poor enough to allow them to outscore us. And so I think that's kind of where my head is at with this game, is like, if we can just push the pace a little bit, and even, we don't need to push the pace a lot really in order to gain more possessions. I don't think we even need to try to turn the ball over a ton. We just need to do what we normally do on offense and score 80 points. And I think we'll be in good shape. So.
Yeah, and it's not to say that this is exactly apples to apples with Iowa, because Luka Garza does get way more touches, and he really is the focal point of that offense. So, I mean, everything runs through him there. Not everything runs through Evan Mobley at USC. It's a pretty evenly spread out attack. I mean, I don't have the numbers in front of me. I think he's averaging 16.5 points per game. They have another guy in double digits at 13.5. And other than that, they got a few guys around 6 to 9 points. So it's pretty spread out. It's a little tougher task, I guess. These other guys are more capable, but none of them are really, I don't think, guys who are really going to take over a game by themselves. It's really a team effort. And yeah, I think that's the way to go. And now I'm blanking on what I was going to say based off of what you were just saying. I do think if we are to lose this game, it's going to be because we have a terrible defensive effort. I think offensively, yes, it's going to be the toughest defense we've faced all year and probably will face all year, in terms of like they're historically great in their 2-point field goal percentage defense, but they've they've allowed decent threes. They can test a lot, but we're still going to get our points. I don't think they're going to completely shut us down. We're still going to get good looks, and it's just kind of be a chess match back and forth there. What's really going to be the factor is how we are able to defend them and how they're able to score against us. If they're shooting 60% from three, then yeah, that's probably bad news for us. But I really think that, a solid defensive effort, we get into them a little bit, get them uncomfortable. We're not letting them get good open looks from three. We're not over rotating on defense like Oregon did, where they were jumping out of their shoes for pass fakes and then leaving Isaiah White and Edey for wide open threes. So I think just being disciplined on defense. I know we go for some steals and that's good, put some pressure on them. But yeah, if we come out with a dud defensively, then that's where we're going to be in trouble, because I still think we're going to get our 70, 75 plus points.
Mm-hmm. What do you think would have to happen in order for us to come out with a dud? Like, would it be that geez, I don't know, Timmy gets in early foul trouble, or our guards are allowing drives straight to the hoop, or aren't closing out well enough? Like, what would have to happen for, like, on our end defensively, in order for us to be, in really bad shape in this game?
Defensively, foul trouble for sure. I mean, if Timmy's picking up early fouls, I think I saw somebody on Twitter saying, like, what do we do if Timmy gets 2 fouls and Watson gets 2 fouls in the first half? Like, who are we putting in? I feel like at that in the Elite Eight, you're probably trusting Timmy or Watson to stay in there with 2. And I would probably put Watson in there first, so that if somebody picks up the 3rd foul, it's him and not Timmy. Defensively, to win, like I said, we got to stay out on the shooters. And yeah, clean drives to the basket are always bad. We just can't give them easy looks. Like BYU at the beginning of that game, when they were putting us in pick and rolls, and they were just getting either wide open 3-pointer looks or wide open dunks at the hoop. Like, can't have that. We saw that today with USC and Oregon. They were just getting easy wide open looks, whether it be in transition or in just their normal offense. But really, I didn't think that USC does anything offensively that's all that impressive. I think on the other side of the ball, offensively, what it would take for us to win, I think the guard play is going to be huge this game. Timmy's kind of been the stud the last few games, even though teams have been able to, kind of shut down guards, and they've had the personnel to do that a little bit, or at least to contain them, not shut them down. But Ian Nemhard stepped up huge today. And I mean, if they're having another game similar to that and they're knocking down their shots, I think you kind of chalk it up to a win right there. If we're getting help from those other guys. Otherwise, I would expect Suggs is going to have a big game, and Kispert as well. And if we're best suited to do that of any team in the country, who you can shut down their star player inside and the guy who's been carrying their team this year. And you got plenty of other guys. I mean, we have so much guard depth and different ways to beat you there, which is another reason why I think the zone is going to go terribly if they stick with that. So
Yeah, no doubt. I was looking at USC's offense a little bit and kind of how, thinking about how we would handle it. And it seems like they do some pick and roll stuff, but there were some the possessions that stood out to me the most were when they tried to get the ball to Evan Mobley, like right around the free throw line, and had him just try and go one-on-one to the basket. And what ended up happening in a lot of those possessions was that he would either kick it out for wide open 3 because Oregon was over helping, or if the defense played well enough, he would end up kind of, in the short corner, putting up like a fadeaway jumper. And I think if whoever's guarding him, Timmy, Watson, I think if we force that action and we force that to happen, then I think we'll be in really good shape.
Yeah. And I mean, that kind of goes back to the game plan too. If you're just, make everybody else, or make him be the guy that's getting everything and take out everybody else's, if he's at that free throw line there and everybody else is just standing around and he's taking it to the hoop, like, that's fine as long as we're not getting into foul trouble. They're not. And the thing is too, is that they've had times where they've just, for whatever reason, completely gone away from him. Like they don't give him a
Yeah.
touch for like multiple possessions, 3 or 4 minutes in a row. And you saw it in the Oregon game where Oregon looked like they were dead. And then suddenly, it's a 8-point game or something, with a chance to cut it to a 2 possession game. Like they can go for stretches without scoring, and they just don't really seem consistent in what they do offensively. They're still a good offensive team, but it's really not. I mean, nothing's really like Gonzaga this year, but it's not a consistent free flowing type offense. It's kind of here and there, and obviously, if they're not hitting threes, that can really take you out of a game really quick. If they're now relying on those.
Yeah, yeah. So and I think that's part of the reason why they've been so successful in the last few games is just that they're kind of shooting out of their minds,
Mm-hmm.
and to me, I don't view that as like a sustainable way to continue to win games. One
No, I
other
mean
thing that
it.
I also thought was a little bit interesting was just that, like the way that they are playing offensively and defensively kind of dictates the other side of the ball and how they play on the other side of the ball too. Just looking at some of the correlation numbers in KenPom, um, uh, just positive numbers are like a positive correlation. Obviously, negative numbers mean that the numbers are opposite correlated, and they range from negative 100 to positive 100. When their offensive efficiency numbers are positively correlated with their effective field goal percentage plus 76%. Uh, but it's negatively correlated with their defensive efficiency, negative 31. So what that tells me is like when they're playing well offensively, they kind of like relax defensively as well. So I don't know, just kind of something I noticed quickly. I don't know if that'll play a factor in our game per se, but I do think it'll be kind of something to watch for. So the last thing I'll say here, just going back to like what we need to do offensively in order to just overpower them. In 9 of USC's 13 games that they've allowed their opponents to shoot better than 42% from two, they have either lost or won by only single digits. Meaning, when they are themselves, when they do what they know that they can do defensively from two, they usually win big. And in only 6 of their 18 games, when they allow under 42% from two, they've either lost or won by single digits. So yeah, again, what that tells us is, if we shoot the ball well from two, I think we're going to be in much better shape. And this year, to put that in perspective, our lowest 2-point percentage all year was 51%. And we're averaging 50 points in the paint against Power 6 teams this year as well in the 7 games that we played there. Last thing I'll note here is just that we have made greater than 21 twos in all but 5 games this year, and USC hasn't allowed more than 21 twos in a game this year. So again, that speaks to what this matchup is going to be. It's going to be kind of nuts, but I'm really looking forward to it. It's going to be fun.
Yeah, and I mean, it really comes down to we'll hear people saying Gonzaga hasn't played size like this, and they haven't played a defense like this that protects the rim. They're allowing only 49% around the rim, and we're shooting 71%. And so my counter would be USC hasn't played a team like us. I can almost guarantee you that they haven't allowed more than 21 twos in a game this year, but they haven't had a team like Gonzaga who's shooting so many twos and so many right around the rim. So it's really going to be a battle. These teams aren't familiar with each other at all. I think the last time they played was 1992. So it's not something where the coaches are familiar with each other's schemes or anything like that. So it's going to be, short game planning, which I think almost favors Gonzaga in this instance, just because, you want as much time as possible to game plan against that offense. So yeah, I'm excited to see it. I think KenPom has us favored by 7. Haslametrics has us favored by 9. I think the line or the spread just came out for our game, and I think it opened at 9. So, I mean, we're going to be, relatively speaking, heavily favored in this game, but it's going to be a battle. It's definitely, I think, going to be our toughest test. most unique test of the year. And like we said, it's a good thing that we've played a lot of different looks this year, because we're not used to just playing and beating up on the same style of basketball. So I'm excited for it. 4:15 on Tuesday if you're here on the West Coast. So hope you guys are ready. You get a maybe early exit from work.
Yep. Block off that calendar. No late afternoon meetings. All right, that does it for us. Thanks for listening. Make sure to subscribe if you like what you hear. Follow us on Twitter at Zag Talk. And our next episode will, knock on wood, be our Final Four preview, which will hopefully be releasing after our game on Tuesday. Go Zags!
Go Zags!